Welcome to our fourth edition of Unchoir. Bjorn here from Christ the King Lutheran in Bloomington, broadcasting from my basement office. And we are exploring the music coming up for this coming Sunday. We have a great collection of hymns, and there's a theme that emerged in thinking through my presentation of these for you tonight. All of them share one characteristic: strength. Whether it's a strong tune or a strong text or both, they are just imbued with boldness and confidence. And so I'm excited to share these with you, whether you're watching this live tonight on Monday or catching it as part of the church email that's going out tomorrow on Tuesday, or following up in following days. The first item will be a familiar tune with a brand new text. It's not in our hymnal, so I won't announce any numbers. Those of you that were good choral students and picked up a hymnal, I'll announce those hymns that are in the hymnals. And if you also have a LBW, the old green hymnal at home, I'll announce the number for that as well. Hi, Bev. Welcome. So again, we have bold hymns tonight. Hello, Marilyn. We are looking at the first bold hymn for Sunday. It's a new text, again with an old tune. And the text is by a living author. His name is Michael Hudson. He's an Episcopal priest living in the mountains of North Carolina. Before he was ordained, he wrote a lot of Christian contemporary music. He is credited with over 75 pieces to his repertoire. And as his Christian journey continues, as many of ours does and evolves over time, he was attracted to the liberal Anglican expression of Christianity and became a priest. And as part of his personal discipline, he decided to write a text for each of the Gospels for all 3 years of our common revised lectionary that Episcopalians, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Methodists, so many denominations closely aligned with the Roman Catholic lectionary as well, the appointed readings for each Sunday of the year. So what he has come up with is a resulting collection of 153 different hymn texts. They're very singable, they're poetic, they're beautifully crafted. And for those of us who are charged with picking out music to put on people's lips, which is a very humbling process, it's nice for those Sundays where we have odd gospels or difficult themes. We can connect to them and not just programs, quote-unquote, generic music. So I have really appreciated this resource that appeals to all those denominations that use the Revised Common Lectionary. The text we are going to be singing on Sunday is entitled "The Keeper of a Vineyard." This text appeals to me. I raise grapes, so I do some pruning and I understand some of the imagery contained in this hymn. On Sunday, we'll hear the story of a grape grower. Through mystical metaphors, Hudson gives us Jesus' retelling of the parable with a little bit of a different spin on it. So on Sunday, we will hear the following parable from Jesus. Once upon a time, there was a man. The man had a vineyard. He planted and tended it, cared for it. But then he had to leave for a foreign country, and so he left it to tenants. The tenants were not good tenants. He sent his servants to collect the produce, and each time the servants came back beaten and empty-handed. So he finally decided to send his son, thinking they would respect him. Of course, they didn't. They instead killed him. But of course, we know that that is not the end of this parable, the end of the story Jesus is telling. For in the end of it, the explanation is given that this vineyard kingdom is taken away from the malcontents and instead given to those who will actually produce the fruits of righteousness. So this hymn, "The Keeper of the Garden" plays, or "The Keeper of a Vineyard," plays off of that. And it also continues the thinking that we had this last Sunday about the parable of the two sons. Who is it exactly that does righteousness? And those that do righteousness are given approval. So I will speak through this text again. This is not in any hymnal, but it will be printed in your bulletins on Sunday. The Keeper of a Vineyard. The keeper of a vineyard dreamed of vines alive with fruit, and tended vine and dream alike, down years of sharp dispute, as others came to claim the land, to drink its fruit as spoil, without a grower's love of growth or farmer's love of soil. The keeper had a child, firstborn, who came to work the land. The malcontents desired his life, but did not understand. This life, once it was given up, this blood, once spilt like wine, would soak deep down into the ground and rise up in the vine. And then the plant, fresh charged, would be itself a vein of grace. Away the keeper might extend a hopeful green embrace, connecting child and foe and friend, commingled and intertwined, to be and bear the fruit of God in one life-giving vine. A real sermon and song, and very concise in under 2.5 minutes. This hymn will be singing to the tune Kingsfold, a British folk tune known in variants in both England and in Ireland, and first used in a hymnal by Ralph Vaughan Williams, 20th century composer and lover of folk music. He gave this tune the title Kingsfold, after the place where he first heard it. Some scholars believe it dates back to the Middle Ages, so a very old folk tune. And this tune is really ideal for a lot of these sort of storytelling texts, whether they are ballads of sacred or secular nature, because it uses a familiar form. It's called AABA form, meaning that we have the first phrase, and then that phrase is repeated, then we have something entirely different, and then we go back to the original phrase again. So we have that constant sort of back and forth of surprise. And when we come to the end of phrases, the last note changes between the two A sections. And so we have this sort of evolving, unfolding, ongoing connection to the piece and the story as it's presented. So this folk tune, many of you will find familiar. There's our B phrase. The keeper of a vineyard dreamed of vines alive with fruit, and tended vine and dream alike down years of sharp dispute. As others claim to claim the land, to drink its fruit as spoil, without a grower's love of growth or farmer's love of soul. The keeper had a child firstborn who came to work the land. The malcontents desired his life, but did not understand. This life once it was given up, this blood once spilled like wine, would soak deep down into the ground and rise up in the vine. And then the plant fresh charged would be itself a vein of grace. Away the keeper might extend a hopeful green embrace, connecting child and foe and friend, commingled, intertwined, to be and bear the fruit of God in one life-giving vine. again, a nice pairing I always like with a new text when it is paired with a familiar tune. I think they actually get used that way. So that's our hymn of the day for Sunday. Our next hymn is something that I'm guessing it will be new to many, if not all of you. Excuse me, changing books here. In ELW, the Red Book, 554, Lord, your hands have formed this world. This is a wonderful tune that hails from the northern Philippines. It is a tune of the Ikalahan people. They live in the forest and have established rights, finally, legal rights to their ancestral homeland that has been under constant siege from development and destruction of their forests. And the text comes to us through Ramon and Sario Oleano, who are researchers into the folk traditions of that area. And it is translated into English by the Reverend Delbert Rice, who's a United Church of Christ missionary and anthropologist. So very direct lineage from the Philippines to us on the North American continent. And this hymn is a prayer of thanks to God, who speaks to us through water, rock, soil, tree, crop, all signs that God is making all things new. And that phrase, signs that you make all things new, serves as a little refrain at the end of each of the three stanzas. I'll bring you through that particular phrase so you can sing along even as we learn this together tonight. Now, like much of the music of Asia, and in common with folk traditions of other places, Europe, Africa, North America, and other places, it's pentatonic, meaning that it's based on a scale of 5 pitches. So if you think of the black keys on the piano, that is where the notes that we are familiar with in an 8-step scale are skipped over. So there's little gaps. There's a group of 2 pitches and a group of 3 pitches, and then the pattern continues. So tunes in this pentatonic form tend to be a little bit more compact. This particular hymn uses all 5 notes and then part of the next series of the 5 notes. So it's a little bit more expansive. So you'll notice that it starts out pretty low in our register. So if you are a soprano, a high tenor voice, you'll notice it sits really low. Don't worry, you'll get to sing up higher in your range. So this is really covering everybody. And it's a great way to sing and use our full voice from the bottom register up to our top head voice. Now, again, getting back to the pentatonic idea, some of our most beautiful folk melodies are pentatonic. Spirituals like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, Go Tell It on the Mountain, only use 5 notes. Early American folk tunes like I am a poor wayfaring stranger, da 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 da. Or Amazing Grace, only use 5 pitches. Loch Lomond, the Scottish folk tune, and even the children's nursery rhyme, Pop Goes the Weasel, is pentatonic. I have yet to discover a hymn text that works nicely with that particular pentatonic tune, Pop Goes the Weasel, but I'm sure someday someone will craft something. Now this song is of particular interest to, I think, us at this time of pandemic. We're all staying home more. Our homes are serving as our churches, our school, our workplaces, our entertainment centers, our restaurants. And using that image of home, we come to the 3rd stanza of this particular hymn. And in it we are given the image of a mat being unrolled by God. Now, of course, this is an Asian hymn, and that metaphor in that context, cultural context, is a symbol of a place to stop, to rest, to sleep, to eat. And it speaks to God with the following text. Like a mat, you roll out land, space to build for us and you, earthly homes, and better still, homes for Christ, the truest sign, that you make all things new. And as promised, I will teach you that last phrase. that text. Signs that you make all things new, your turn. Signs that you make all things new. You can sing along. I'll nod when it's your cue. That is how each stanza finishes. The melody, again, starts out on that low tone. Signs that you make all things new. Let's go through this, and the text is, Lord, your hands have formed this world. Every part is shaped by you. Water tumbling over rocks, air and sunlight, each day's signs that you make all things new. Yours the soil that holds the seed, you give warmth and moisture to, sprouting blossoms, crops and buds, trees and plants, the season's signs that you make all things new. Like a mat, you roll out land, space to build for us and you, earthly homes and better still, homes for Christ, the truest sign that you make all things new. And so our homes shelter us and remind us that it is indeed Christ who gathers us as chicks under a mother's hands. And so while we are at home, we can feel safe and cared for in the love of God. Let's put this tune and text together. Lord, your hands have formed this world. Every part is shaped by you. Water tumbling over rocks, air and sunlight, each day's sign that you make all things new. Yours the soil that holds the seed, you give warmth and moisture to, sprouting blossoms, crops and buds, trees and plants, the season signs that you make all things new. Like a mat you roll out land, space to build for us and you, earthly homes and better still, homes for Christ, the truest sign that you make all things new. Definitely a wonderful addition to our collection of global hymn tunes in our repertoire at CTK. Now, our last hymn is probably going to be the most familiar, at least tune-wise, to us. And this hymn is in the hymnal, Lord Christ, When First You Came to Earth. It's in the red ELW hymnal at 727. And if you happen to have a green LBW, the older hymnal, at home, the number is 421, 421. I'll give you a second to find that if you have a hymn book at home. And I'll tell you a little bit about the author of the text. The author is Walter Russell Bowie, who lived from 1882 to 1969. He was a priest, author, and educator in the Episcopal Church. He was born in Richmond, Virginia, but went on to Harvard University to earn his bachelor's and master's degrees. And as an undergraduate, Bowie happened to be also the co-editor of the Harvard Daily Student newspaper alongside the future President Franklin D. Roosevelt. They were co-editors together. And after he was finished with his education at Harvard, he returned to Virginia and entered the seminary at Alexandria, Virginia. And afterwards, Bowie became known as an excellent preacher and as well a wonderful author of books and articles and as a hymnist. Now, in the 1920s, he advocated for what would become known as the social gospel. Hello, Bonnie. And the social gospel was a movement within Protestantism of the day that applied Christian ethics to social problems, especially problems such as poverty, crime, racial tensions, slums, child labor, the dangers of war. The list continues. And Bowie supported also the work of the League of Nations, the forerunner of our present-day United Nations, and advocated for immigration reform. Doing all this while also opposing the Ku Klux Klan and the fundamentalism that was sweeping through churches of the day. So all of this was during his parish work, and after that he became, after he was done serving in a congregation or two, he became the professor of pastoral theology at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. He served there until 1950. Bowie was the editor, also a member of the editorial committee of the Revised Standard Version of our Bible, and that is the version that we used before the new Revised Standard Version came along, which we happen to rely on quite heavily in our Lutheran tradition. Now, Bowie's strong text, Lord Christ, When First You Came to Earth, one of the hymns we will be singing and using on Sunday, was written in 1928 and published in the 1930s, just as many of the world's empires escalated towards yet another world war. Stanza 3 of this hymn reads as follows: New advent of the love of Christ, will we again refuse you? Till in the night of hate and war we perish as we lose you. From ancient doubts our minds release, to seek the kingdom of your peace, by which alone we choose you. Through the author's lens of the social gospel, in another stanza we look back in time to Christ's own judgment and execution as a criminal by the powers of this world. O awesome love, which finds no room in life where sin denies you, and doomed to death shall bring to doom the power that crucifies you, till not a stone is left on stone, and then the nation's pride or throne will nevermore defy you. The hymn preaches an indictment on human systems of sin and oppression, while inviting us to a new creation as part of Christ's kingdom, and as that kingdom takes shape in our hearts and contemporary lives. O wounded hands of Jesus, build in us your new creation. Our pride is dust, our vaunt is stilled. We wait your revelation. O love that triumphs over loss, we bring our hearts before your cross. Come, finish your salvation. A very powerful text indeed. Now we sing this text to the tune Mit Freudenzeit, a melody that was first published in a Bohemian Brethren hymnal in the 16th century. You may recognize this tune. So again, this tune, first published in a Bohemian Brethren hymnal, was first published in about 1588. Now, the Brethren were descendants of Jan Hus, who 100 years before Luther led a Reformation movement in Bohemia, now the Czech Republic. The ideas of this Bohemian Reformation were very similar to Luther's, but perhaps more radical and forward-thinking. For instance, Huss allowed women to preach and advocated for their complete equality in church life. For this and other beliefs, he was burned at the stake by church authorities, but his followers continued and joined other streams of the better-known Reformation that was to come. This tune, Mit Freuden saat, is likely older than the late 1500s when first we find it in printed form. But it shares a vigor and a triumph associated with many Reformation-era melodies, and was originally associated with an Easter text, which I think gives it a little bit more power too. We will sing through this hymn together, so if you're following along in the ELW, 727. Lord Christ, when first you came to earth, upon a cross they bound you, and mocked your saving kingship's worth by thorns with which they crowned you. And still our wrongs may fashion now new thorns to pierce that steady brow, and robe of sorrow round you. Oh, awesome love, which finds no room in life where sin denies you, and doomed to death shall bring to gloom the power that crucifies you. Till not a stone is left unstoned, and then the nation's pride o'erthrown will never more deny you. New advent of the love of Christ, will we again refuse you, till in the night of hate and war we perish as we lose you. From ancient doubts our minds release, to seek the kingdom of your peace, by which alone we choose you. Oh, wounded hands of Jesus, build in us your new creation. Our pride is dust, our vaunt is stilled, we wait your revelation. Our love that triumphs over loss, we bring our hearts before your cross. Come, finish your salvation. A very powerful text indeed. I hope you've enjoyed learning and relearning and visiting with me over these hymns tonight. And as you experience online worship on Sunday, these will not now be any surprises to you. So as we explored tonight a tune from the British Isles, from our neighbors in the Philippines, and have given voice to a tune that would be familiar to some wildly forward-thinking ancestors of faith, we find strength in their hopeful nature and their bold proclamation of God's reign. Peace be with you tonight and always, friends.